All right, guys, we are live with another show here, and we're going to be talking with an American researcher named Judy. And what's her last name?
Mikovits. Dr.
Mikovits?
Judy Mikovits.
Yeah. So it should be a great episode tonight, and so I really am appreciative of everyone tuning in. Make sure to share this link on Facebook and all your social media accounts to get the word out there. And also don't forget to share the video we made yesterday called Coronavirus, A Brave New World. And so that will be in the description. The link will be in the description. Make sure you share that. We have Dustin, of course, Dustin in the house. We have Logan in the house. And we have Lisa Palumbo. So it's going to be a awesome show. I think she's ready.
Her?
Well, because she was not in her seat.
She wasn't in her seat. There she is. Yeah.
All right. So we got a bunch of us in the house here today. We're running a little behind, but I think we're in it to win it here. Are you hearing the show now, Logan?
Nope. Totally deaf.
You don't hear anything?
Nothing in my earphones. I can hear you, but if anyone else talks, I don't think I'm gonna hear anything.
But just mess with that cord.
Oh
over
yeah,
there.
we'll get there.
Yeah. So Dustin, how are we gonna start this? Are we gonna do a giveaway to start off the show?
Sure. If that's yeah, that sounds
You
good.
got it all planned, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So since Logan is 30 seconds behind, because I think he's listening to the broadcast, so he'll be able to chime in about 20 seconds. So
No, I can hear you. I can hear you. I if I hold it perfectly this way, I can hear the show.
okay. Oh, those are okay. You're set. All right. Cool. All right. Good.
It's a high quality production here,
So
guys.
I do have.
This is a really high quality
I do have
production.
a question that I've researched, and I know 100% is correct. It's
Okay.
not
Well,
going to be messed
run
up.
it past Paul real quick. So what I want to do is just kind of go through the chat real quick, because we do have 124 people watching. We've got a lot of people who I just want to. I don't even know who's in the chat right now, but there's a lot of people who are here. Let me just go to the bottom. IFB Javier Ramos, Tim DeLello. He's a pastor out there in the Midwest. Can someone tell me the truth about blocking me? So somebody's complaining about blocking. Block your hatred. And see, I can see things people can't see. So I'm just going to do you guys a favor, because it's been flagged by YouTube. It says, this is coming at Maria YouTube 100. So she's in the chat. Can someone stop me from telling the truth by blocking me? You will never know Christ in the flesh. I won't let the like of you anywhere near him. Block your hatred and your stupidity. So you guys didn't see that comment. Jenny W's here. Pillar and Ground is giving a shout out to Gary. Paul Atkins. If you guys don't know Paul Atkins, there's one thing I know about Paul Atkins. Paul Atkins is from Temple, Texas. So I think he types that in. So yeah, so we got a lot of watchers here, and we got some blue thumbs there. So go ahead and hit that thumbs up button if you're watching, and just assume this is going to be a good show if you've tuned into our other shows. Yeah, so that was my holding off to make sure that we're actually prepared to ask a trivia question. And the winner, whoever can call 480-465-1203 within the United States, who knows the correct answer to this trivia question, will win their own personal DVD of
Poison on Tap.
Fluoride Poison on Tap.
Yeah, very important film. If you haven't seen it, make sure you go get it. All right, there you go. Man.
All right, so Brother Logan.
Do you have the question, man?
I do. In Revelation, the Apostle John was told the number of a great army in the last days. How many was it? 480-465-1203. In Revelation, the Apostle John was told the number of a great army in the last days. How many was it?
All right. I think that's we can get that one right. I'm pretty sure. So, all right. So, we're gonna have Dr. Judy with us, and we have our friend Lisa here, and we're gonna be doing some calls. We've been going. This is like, I don't know how many days straight we've done this, but we're pretty much cranking these things out. So the producer hasn't a script for us, so a lot of times we just sit down and with our lined up guest, and we kind of just let it roll. So hopefully we won't roll off track, and we'll be able to keep it on the rails here.
So Dustin, you got the first caller here, so I'm going to get him on the line. So, all right, you're on the air. Framing the World, do you have the answer? And they hung up. So
Cool.
Someone else call in, 480-465-1203. We'll get you on the air.
All right, so if you guys haven't checked this out, make sure you share Paul's videos that he's done, the last two videos, Plandemic and Coronavirus, A Brave New World. Now, if this is your first time tuning in to us, what we've done in the last couple weeks is we've just been going live talking about the current events that are happening in our immediate world, but also worldwide. There's an unprecedented occurrence. So if you've just woken from a coma and this is your first opportunity to see anything, we're here to tell you that there has been an outbreak, a pandemic of the coronavirus. Now, this is not, you're like, coronavirus, you mean the common cold? You mean that thing that's on the bottom or the back of the Lysol can that is easily killed by spraying some Lysol? It doesn't even have to be Lysol. It could be store brand disinfectant spray. Sorry, store brand disinfectant spray. Sorry, I haven't rehearsed my lines. So we'll take that call. But yes, coronavirus. But this is specific coronavirus. It's COVID, which I don't know what it stands for, but I think the co part might be corona, and vid means very dangerous. So number 19 for the 2019 strain. So do we have a caller calling in to answer this question?
Yep,
I'm here.
Hi, how are you doing? Who am I talking to?
This is Dave,
Hey, Dave. Where are you calling from?
Michigan.
Michigan. All right. We got a lot of pastors out there we've called on our show, calling random pastors out there in Michigan. Do you know if we called your pastor?
I don't think you did, but I haven't watched too many of those episodes.
Okay, well, tune in to see. All right, so do you have an answer? How many, what was the question, Logan? I don't want to get...
In Revelation, the Apostle John was told the number of a great army in the last days. How many was it?
I think it was 200 million.
All right.
That is correct.
That's the correct answer. And where would we find that reference?
In
Revelation 9, I think. I think it's 200,000.
Right, that was the tricky part right there, to make sure you can count, to do the math. Because if you go back to the Greek, 1,000 doesn't mean 1,000. It actually means whatever. So...
Oh, then I missed it.
Now, is it, so it's Dave from Michigan?
That's right.
All right, so stay on the line. Hey, since we've got you here, what do you think about what's going on? Are you affected very much directly by what's happening with this lockdown, or I guess it's called a lockdown. Maybe it's called just a stay-at-home order. What's it like for you there?
Well, we've been on shelter in place here in Michigan for, I think this is our 12th day. So yeah, I mean, it affects me because I'm home, and my wife's home for the most part from our jobs. Though we're lucky because we still are getting paid by our jobs, so we're fortunate there. She's in the medical industry, but she's doing a lot from home. But soul winning is shut down, and church is shut down, so we're doing a lot of live stream, and yeah, it's affecting our lives.
Now, you mentioned your wife was in the medical field. Do you think this is something does she have an opinion about this, or do you guys have an opinion?
Our opinions would be different, hers and mine. I'm very... I don't remember the colors. Am I blue pill and she's red pill, or vice versa? I think I'm red pill.
Well, we'll tell you. What do you think? Are you blue pill means that you're that you just want to go back to sleep and just like leave me alone. And red pill is like, tell me the truth. I don't care what it costs.
Yeah, I'm red, and I think most likely, my opinion most likely is that it's a bioweapon.
Okay.
Tell her to talk because I can't.
Okay, you can mute yourself, Paul. Because everybody can hear you clickety clackening, and you guys kind of, there you go. So Dave, you're red pilled. How long have you been red pilled, as they call it?
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm increasingly red pill. So I guess I think I've always tended that way. but I'm just going higher on the red pill scale these days.
So
I got saved 7 years ago, and that was a big difference.
Yeah. Well, so as you're discovering disturbing truths, does it, do you have any fears or apprehensions, or do you wish that you didn't know those things? Do you wish you were back blue-pilled?
No, I'd rather know. Even if it's bad news, I'd rather know.
Okay.
And I'm not really afraid of the virus. I liked what Dr. Hovind said the other day, because I take a lot of zinc already, so I think I'm already immune.
Yeah, so you can just probably go to the hardware section, get some washers and nuts and bolts, and just suck on them, right?
Yeah. Hey, Dustin, I have a question for you.
Okay, real quick. I think we have our guest on the line. So what's your question for me? So
well, maybe
that's my preemptive way to get out of it if I don't want to answer it.
You can answer later if you want, but you talked a little bit about a hypnotist the other night that you attended, but you never really finished the story. Like, what did you think about it? And, was he able to hypnotize you? And just when you walked away, what did you think about it?
Okay, real quick. I did not get hypnotized. I walked away thinking that it was a big act, and that maybe they were actors that they brought up on stage, and that it was just that was just a pretend thing, and that nobody ever got hypnotized. I didn't believe that somebody that could happen, just because directly it never happened to me, and I kind of wanted it to, just to see what it was like. But I used to. I could get into this long thing, but I've attempted to be hypnotized many times, and it's never ever taken. I've always, for whatever reason, but I feel like I've seen people who have been under real hypnosis and have really been where the light's out and somebody else is driving, or something else is driving, or another part of them is in their conscious mind is turned off. I've seen that happen, so I believe that it is possible. But that night, I believe that there was Flip Orley was the name of the stage hypnotist. If you want to look him up, I don't know if he's famous or anything. But long story short, that night I thought it was a kind of a pretend thing, that they had that they had a team of people in the plants. They were just in the audience, and they were his team. So that's what I believed. It was still fun, but it didn't work on me. So, Dave, I'm going to have to let you go. We have Dr. Judy. Is she a researcher? Dr. Judy Mikovits. So thanks for calling. God bless you. And, keep digging up the truth, and call us anytime.
All right. Real quick, though, before we go to her, I just wanted to let you guys know about a few different products I have in the store that I just got in the store today. So we have these waterproof Bibles. So make sure to go check those out on the store as well. But Lisa is gonna do an intro for her. I don't know if you wanted to go into that now, or just wait a little bit, or if we want to take another call.
Lisa, can you intro?
You're muted.
Lisa, can you intro Dr. Judy for us?
Sure. I'm gonna have her do some extra intro as well. But Dr. Judy Mikovits is going to be. She is a honest and unbiased authority. She has a PhD in both molecular biology and biochemistry, as well as a BA in chemistry. Dr. Judy Mikovits has worked in a level 4 bioweapons lab. She's done extensive research into retroviruses. So she has such a colorful background, and I want her herself to kind of enlighten us on all her diversity in her work.
Dr. Judy, can you hear us now?
Here.
All right, one more time. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Can you go into? We just wanted to have you give our audience, who may not be familiar with you, just your kind of expand on the background that Lisa was giving for us.
Sure. I got my PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology in 1991. My PhD thesis really changed the paradigm of HIV/AIDS in this country. It was called HIV latency and monocytes, and what it basically said was, at a time when we let when patients' T cells and their adaptive immune response was, going in the toilet because of the damage done by the infection, that actually the damage was done by another part of the immune system, the monocyte macrophage, and it was that inflammation, that inability to control the flame and the fire, which was driving the pathogenesis, the disease development. So you could be infected with HIV and not get AIDS if you simply controlled the monocyte macrophage. And we developed several drugs, immunomodulating compounds that were biological response modifiers, including peptide T. I worked at the National Cancer Institute for 20 years doing this work from 1980 until 2001 when I moved to industry. And there I worked in industry looking at epigenetics, looking at gene expression. It's not the blueprint, it's not your genetics, it's the dysregulation of the gene expression that contributes to disease. And again, that plays a key part in the infection of SARS coronavirus 2 versus the disease. So the whole idea is what's being perpetrated now as COVID-19 or coronavirus infectious disease 2019. A key in how it's being misrepresented is you can be infected without having disease. And if you're infected without having disease, you have immunity that can help others.
Okay, so Judy, it's such an honor to talk to you. I've listened to so many of your podcasts, your lectures at Autism One, and different interviews, and I always learn something new from you. So what I want to jump into is if you could tell our audience, what is zoonosis and why the bat soup theory is not plausible, and go into that a little bit.
Well, zoonosis is kind of what the word means, a zoo, and then it jumps species. So you take a pathogen that is not a pathogen, that is a symbiotic, that lives comfortably, let's just say, in bats. The viruses that live comfortably in bats, and they don't bother the bats, and the bats don't care that they're there. And those viruses, when they jump species, they cause devastating disease. So the zoonosis in HIV/AIDS was a monkey virus that jumped to humans. And so in this case, with the coronavirus that came from bats, usually what you need, bat viruses just would not infect human cells. The differences between the immune systems are so great that you need an intermediate host, they call it. You need another small animal, a civet. I don't even know what a civet is. It's a monkey with a tail that crawls around the ground, civet. So you need another animal host in order to attenuate the virus, in order to change the virus, to teach it to infect an immune system that's closer to humans. So all animals, and so why the theory of the bat virus just jumping from uncooked soup in a seafood market in Wuhan, China, into humans makes absolutely no sense, because usually and essentially in all the latest pandemics, the intermediate wasn't another small animal, as we're told. The intermediate was an animal cell line or animal tissues repeatedly grown. So what we did, and this is why you mentioned my 1999. In 1999, I worked at USAMRIID, which is the U.S. Army Research Institute of Infectious Disease, there at Fort Detrick, Maryland, right next to the National Cancer Institute. And what I did at the time was two things. I taught the Ebola virus, Ebola Zaire, which was a highly pathogenic strain. My job was to teach it to infect human cells without killing them. because we can't study a virus unless we can grow it. We can't understand how it causes disease in an animal unless we can grow enough copies of it. And at that time, the Ebola virus, and I have to admit it was somewhat scary to do this research, but at that time, the Ebola virus was just killing, just destroying the cells. They'd blow apart almost instantly. You can't study that if that happens. So I had my entire career had been tissue culture, animal tissue culture, human tissue culture, grow various cancers in the laboratory in order to study how they develop and what causes them and what parts of the immune system are dysregulated. So I did finally, the way I would do it is you keep feeding, literally just keep feeding the virus more cells until one day a cell doesn't die. And then you can grow that cell perpetually using various growth factors that we do in the lab. It's not difficult in order to study the virus. So we did that. And then the second thing we did was this was 1999, we took Ebola Zaire, which was the highly pathogenic strain, and we compared it to the Ebola Reston, Virginia strain. Why they had a strain of Ebola from Africa in Reston, Virginia, I don't even want to touch. But at any rate, it sounds like a Wuhan lab next to a seafood market to me. But at any rate, we looked at the difference. So we infected primary human cells with the pathogenic strain, immune cells, and then with the non-pathogenic strain. And what we saw was a signature of disease, these inflammatory mediators. And I know you've seen that in press, how this SARS-2 COVID-19 causing virus, it has an inflammatory signature of disease. And if you, the susceptible individual, don't have that inflammatory signature, doesn't matter how much coronavirus or SARS-CoV-2 is in your body, you won't get sick. You're immune. You make an immune response. You mount an immune response. You have antibodies. You make alpha interferon. You suppress the virus as an immune system will do. So that's part of the big fraud and frustration in all of this is the way they're testing, what they're looking at, and in fact, how they're saying, oh, this virus just popped up overnight and from one woman in a seafood market in Wuhan. I don't know how the bat soup comes into a seafood market. I can't get there. But at any rate, a seafood market with improperly cooked food, and within 2 months' time, a virus jumps to 110 countries. That's really not an ingested virus. That's an injected virus. And I'm saying that coronavirus is an injected.
Oh, did we lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, so Judy, with that being said, and you're saying it's an injected virus, do you think that the rollout of flu shots has anything to do with that? And we see some articles being published that talk about viral interference, that you have a much greater susceptibility to COVID-19 if you have received the flu vaccine. So do you think there was anything different with the flu vaccine that came out just recently, as well as if you are familiar with that Nature article that's gotten a lot of publicity on maybe alternative media, and they have like a banner across it and saying this article is actually being used to prove that this virus was engineered. And it talks about it was a Nature article, engineered bat virus stirs debate over risky research. So if you can kind of touch on both those things, the viral interference with the flu shots themselves maybe being causal, and that Nature article.
Yeah, so absolutely the viral interference. What that means is that when you get, that's a scientific term, when you get the influenza vaccines, let's make it really clear on which shots. In some cases, the influenza, the immune response to influenza can actually spread such that you have an immune response in a good way to other families of viruses. But in the case of a 2000 and I think 17, 18 in the military, they actually studied the flu shot and showed that the viral interference promoted coronavirus infection, enhanced it by 36%. That is, if you got an influenza shot in 2017 and 18 when this paper was published, and they looked at the military who are mandated to get these shots. And in those cases, they were 36% more likely to get a coronavirus infection with the flu shot. So it was promoting the infection. There are several other papers from other influenzas, whether inactivated influenzas, recombinant, that showed that people who got vaccines, including and not limited to influenza vaccines, were far more likely, 4.4 times more likely, especially children, to get the disease. That is, have that powerful immune response, that flame that could not be controlled, that the vaccine promoted the disease, not necessarily the infection, but the disease. So what do we think of with that 2015 Nature paper? It's pretty clear there, and many virologists, not just myself, at the time were saying these things can happen all the time. That we're told when we do this research in the lab, and I was told in 1999, what I was doing was trying to attenuate in a good way, weaken the virus, learn enough about the virus so that we could develop therapies and vaccines to prevent the pathogenic strain from killing people. And that's a laudable goal. And, I bought it hook, line, and sinker, and I did that research. So when in 2015, at the time it was even outlawed in the United States between 2013 and 2017, institutions were not allowed to do what they called gain of function studies. So if you think about the study I just told you, I taught a virus that wouldn't have evolved to infect human cells for decades, if not century, and I taught it in a few months in a laboratory to infect human cells. That's a gain of function study. That was outlawed because of the risky research. And when we do that, we take those cell lines and we send them around the world. And we use those cell lines in manufacturing many biological therapies, but most prominently vaccines. The cell line that was used in that 2015 study discussed, and there's another study it referenced, was called Vero monkey kidney cells. That's the same cell line from which HIV, AIDS evolved from SIV. And yes, there have been numerous reports of HIV sequences. So you can get recombinant activity in the cell line when you infect it with another virus. Then several different viruses, if not many viruses, are expressed. And when they're expressed, they can recombine and cause a very much more dangerous, not attenuated at all vaccine. So, or virus species in a cell line that grows without, it grows in a laboratory. We grow hundreds of liters of these cell lines at a time, and we save them and we use them to manufacture theoretically therapies, but they can also be released from laboratories. They've acquired the ability to be contagious, that is, spread in a way that they wouldn't spread naturally. So I don't like to use the word engineered because, I simply culture a cell over and over again. And I call it the Heisenberg uncertainty principle of biology. Every time you culture a virus, you change it. And we don't know what those changes are. We don't know what will evolve, what dormant virus activated when you infected with SARS, when you infected the Vero monkey kidney cell line with SARS #1, the severe acute respiratory syndrome virus, and allowed it to gain function by infecting this cell line that it previously did not affect. We don't know what changes happen that allow us to see it, but I don't like to use the word engineered because it implies we thought about it and we cut and pasted a virus together, and that's not how it works in the laboratory. We have no idea what's going on in the laboratory, and that's why these studies should never be done again, and that's why theoretically it was outlawed in the country from 2013, and you'd have to ask Francis Collins why suddenly in 2017 he lifted that outlaw, or why the NIAID under Tony Fauci funded these studies in Wuhan, China, with the University of North Carolina and with a Harvard researcher, where they sent this cell line between the labs, via the mail, via researchers. I don't even know how they sent it, but we sent it via the mail when I worked there. So engineered, no. Escaped, likely. Intentional, yes. We did these studies intentionally, and intentionally breaking the law in this case. But I guess maybe Tony Fauci is the law of the world, as we've seen. This virus, this coronavirus 2, is not more than a severe cough, and it's totally implausible that it's passing from human to human by healthy humans coughing. That's not how it happens. It's far more plausible that it's been injected. And yes, essentially every vaccine carrying animal cells, Pediarex with Vero monkey kidney cells, we give that to infants. The flu vaccine in bird avian cells carry coronaviruses, and many other viruses, including retroviruses like HIV. The new flu vaccine in Italy had 4 different influenzas, including H1N1, and it was grown in maiden Darby kidney cells, which are dog cells. Dogs carry coronaviruses. Cats have infectious transmissible coronaviruses and get diseases of them. So this virus didn't spread to 110 countries from a seafood market in China starting December, whatever they told us, of 2019. It's plausible, it's probable that it's been in every flu vaccine since 13 to 15, as that's when this work was being illegally done. We have no idea, but the flu vaccines are driving the infection, and this is injection, and I object very much to the mask, because if you are carrying these injected viruses and you wear a mask and you allow yourself to be under that stress and that fear that they've driven to us, and then you activate these viruses with things like the stress of not having a job, these dormant viruses will wake up in yourself, and you are actually reinfecting yourself over and over with a mask. You're not making somebody else sick, you're making yourself sick. And especially those with asthma, those with COPD, those living in pollution. Yeah, there are a lot of cofactors to disease development, but wearing a mask will kill more people than this virus is not coughed through the air from healthy people who are almost certainly immune, as they've almost certainly been infected over the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so let's go ahead and recap a couple of those points. So, are you saying that we can't catch this? So, unlike, I'm sure you're familiar with the 1918 flu that originated at Fort Riley military base, and it was just after a very experimental bacterial meningitis vaccine, and that was put together by the Rockefeller Institute. And so with that was very transmissible, the bacterial infection. But you're saying this can't be spread person to person. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying it can't.
Okay.
I'm saying it was made in essentially the same way. Yes, there's no question that this virus is more contagious. It's not more pathogenic. It's very much spread from person to person.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So it can be spread person to person, but you're saying the origin, so it's not a retrovirus, but you're saying we don't want to use the word engineered because it's almost like, how the work of Dr. Teresa Deisher, and she talks about insertional mutagenesis, that if you examine the cord blood of a child that gets later diagnosed with autism, the mutations, these de novo mutations, are not in the cord blood, but they came later. So how would what could you explain? And that would be from the aborted fetal cell lines that have DNA fragments. Just like gene therapy, you want to uptake those into your stem cells, and the stem cells will take up those DNA fragments from the aborted fetal cell lines and cause an insertional mutagenesis. But you're saying this is not a retrovirus.
It's not a retrovirus. It's a coronavirus. They're different RNA viruses. But she's right in what she's saying. When you inject all that DNA into an individual, you change their susceptibility to other things because their immune system becomes crippled and dysfunctional, and the fire's always on. So the people most likely to get severe disease from this coronavirus spreading are the vaccine injured. And it is the vaccinated spreading the virus because they're immune compromised. So what I was more saying is healthy people who have not, who did not get severe disease. Let's just say we've heard a lot about teenagers and closing colleges and, hey, the kids don't get sick. So those people almost certainly have made antibodies to the virus, and they were probably infected years ago, at least within the last 3 years. And they can make, and they will make, even people recovering, they will make neutralizing antibodies that prevent further infection, or non-neutralizing antibodies that prevent you from getting as severe a disease if you're infected or exposed again. So there's the epidemic or pandemic is being misrepresented as if viruses float through the air. Viruses don't float through the air. They don't live on surfaces, especially coronaviruses, much more than an hour. We're being told, wipe down your groceries. This is ridiculous. We have immune systems made by God, and unless we've been severely vaccine injured and crippled by the toxins in our environment, we won't have severe disease. We will develop a natural herd immunity, and those people, anybody demonstrating an antibody right now, should be allowed to go to work. That's the entire definition of immune. So we don't need a vaccine forced on our world if we're already immune. And this virus didn't come up from Wuhan, China, and it's not. So we act as if everybody has to wear a mask because you're making everybody sick. Healthy people don't make people sick. Healthy people don't express these viruses. I guarantee you, I'm not expressing this virus. I will not wear a mask because I have been infected in the laboratory by the murine leukemia, the cancer-causing viruses, retroviruses, which we discovered in 2009, causing autism. And if I wear a mask, I will simply reinfect myself and explode my dormant, quiescent, immune-controlled retroviruses, and I will become ill. I will. The last thing I will do is wear a mask.
Okay, so now let's get to the testing. So the testing that we have, it turns out, from what I understand, looking at that there's 4 common cold coronaviruses, and those 4 common cold coronaviruses, and I don't have the letters and numbers that they're denoted by, are giving the false positives. So even on the FDA's website, you can scroll through the Q&A and find out that the false positives are caused by those same 4 common cold coronaviruses. So if you can speak to that, as well as talking about the viral load. So for example, people that are asymptomatic, they can either be perhaps testing for the common cold coronaviruses, or they could be they don't have a significant enough viral load to actually have their body show symptoms of being sick. If you could speak to that.
Right. So there are 2 tests being done right now. One, the polymerase chain reaction, PCR, which shows those cross-reactive sequences you mentioned to other common cold viruses. That PCR, the reagents have been contaminated worldwide. Doing a nasal swab or a throat swab of nucleic acid sequencing does not reflect exposure. I could pull out any microbial sequence I wanted out of somebody's throat. Have you been infected by a virus? You'll make an antibody unless you're immune compromised, have an immune deficiency. So you make an antibody, an IgG says it's a past exposure, and an IgM says it's a recent infection. An IgG is a very strong antibody that every time you're exposed again to a virus, this is called a serology test, you will produce that antibody, and to a virus of that family member. There, as you just mentioned, when you make antibodies, they can be cross-reactive across an entire family because the conserved regions of the family member are usually tested for strength, because that's how your immune system responds. So both of those can be called false positives. And both tests should be used to confirm a positive infection. But more importantly, since infection doesn't equal disease, that inflammatory cytokine signature, those inflammatory molecules that are a simple blood test, several of which have been published, should also be done. So in HIV/AIDS research and all the virology research I've ever done in the last 40 years, you always do a confirmatory test for a positive. You need at least 2 tests to say, yes, that's a true infection. So if it's a cross-reactive antibody, you're still developing immunity against a coronavirus, and you won't necessarily get as sick. That's what all of our vaccines, none of our vaccines that I'm aware of prevent infection. Measles, you get less disease, you ameliorate disease. Polio, that's not a neutralizing antibody. People that get the polio vaccine don't necessarily not get a polio virus in their system. The question is, do they develop a strong enough immune response so that the disease is lessened, so that you don't die of disease? That's at the heart of vaccinology science and why we make these things. So where the numbers, where this disease has been misrepresented in every area of the media, including the scientific media, is now we're saying what that antibody test means is the IgG, the IgM means early in infection, and the IgG stages the disease. No, it doesn't. That's not immunology. It means you're immune. So we've so twisted and propagandized immunology and biology that all of a sudden there's this super virus out there that's a nothing for people who are healthy, and they will develop a healthy immune response. And we're saying, oh, wait a minute, somebody got infected again. Of course you get exposed to these things. They're everywhere. They're in every animal has coronaviruses, and as you just accurately mentioned, more than one. So yes, all of the tests have cross reactivities. None of them have used other confirmatory assays. So every number, and the most important thing is in hospitals. Oh, you walk in there coughing right now, or with a chest x-ray like my husband who had bacterial pneumonia in his 30s 50 years ago. If he walked in there, and he has COPD, by the way, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, sort of the end product of what a coronavirus could do. But infection does not equal disease. And you don't walk into an emergency room and diagnose an infection with a chest x-ray. I'm sorry, that's not how it works. And you don't say, oh, well, the sequences were in your nose, therefore you're infected. That's not how it works. And it is how it works in 21st century America, and in 2020, when there's another agenda towards taking away personal freedoms, making everyone walk around in a mask. Is that to say you control me? I won't wear a mask. I'm not going to wear a mask. There's no public health risk for a healthy person to walk down the beach. Why are you closing the bathrooms and the restaurants? If you're sick, do you really go to a restaurant? No, stay home, get well, drink chicken soup and vitamin C, and you'll be just fine, or a little zinc. So this is an agenda that has nothing to do with this infection, and none of the science support the numbers they're giving, the numbers of death. The people are said to be dying of COVID-19. COVID-19 means coronavirus infectious disease 19. It doesn't satisfy a single one of Koch's postulates or Hill's criteria for every person with the virus has to have the disease. Most people don't have the disease. And in fact, the German numbers are less than 0.8% get any kind of severe disease with it. So this can only be considered to be a plague of corruption intended to take away constitutional, religious, and every other kind of freedoms which have been taken from America, by the agenda of this vaccine program now since 1986, when all liability's been removed from manufacturers.
Okay, that was a mouthful. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Now, if we can look at, will this vaccine that they're coming up with, will it be a live viral vaccine, like when they had the flu mist, or is it going to be a dead, a killed vaccine? Do you happen to know?
Oh, it really doesn't. It really doesn't matter what viral vaccine they come up with. The one, if you look at the literature, and I'm happy to allow you to post it on your site, but the vaccines for SARS and MERS, remember SARS was 2001. SARS was 2001 or 2. They've yet to make a successful vaccine. And in fact, the vaccines that they have tried have caused far more aggressive lung disease and lung fibrosis. And they know exactly the mechanisms. So do you think if in 18 years we haven't made a vaccine against a coronavirus like SARS or MERS, and do you think in 40 years we haven't come close to making a vaccine, a successful, a safer, efficacious vaccine against HIV or retroviruses, that there's going to be any vaccine, I won't let anybody come anywhere near injecting me with anything they make. So can you make a safe vaccine? I think there are ways to do it. Do we have therapies right now? We don't need a vaccine. All you have to do is have a healthy immune system. Every one of those people who are infected, particularly if they have a severe response and survive, have made the vaccine. We're talking about herd immunity, meaning the exposed who don't get sick are immune because they make antibodies and have adaptive memory responses to the pathogen. All we have to do is take that and give it to the susceptible. We do it all the time in medicine.
So
this is
immunotherapy, yes. So I agree with you 100%. I would never take any of their vaccines, live or dead. I am personally unvaccinated. I have 4 children. They're all unvaccinated. I just also want to have you talk about with pertaining to the retroviruses, and that's where your experience is just absolutely incredible, and you've had direct interaction with Tony Fauci, and so I just want you to kind of give people a fresh perspective on his character and what your experience has been with Dr. Fauci.
It started too long ago, 1984. But I should probably just spin forward to 2009 through 11. So when we published in the journal Science the isolation of a new family of human retroviruses called XMRVs, that was xenotropic murine leukemia virus related retroviruses, the cancer causing, murine means mouse, leukemia, cancers, causing viruses from people with the disease known as myalgic encephalomyelitis, inflammation of the spinal cord and brain. And the CDC dubbed that chronic fatigue syndrome to stigmatize the sufferers. So when it was clear when we published our paper and showed not only the isolation of the virus, several strains of the virus, and a strong association with the disease, that the journal Science wouldn't allow us to stay strong, even though I think there were about 18 zeros in front of the p-value. So the chance that it happened by chance and was not associated, that virus wasn't associated with this severe debilitating disease, was highly significant. At any rate, between 2009 and 2011, it was the data became stronger and stronger that there were many strains of mouse-related cancer viruses, neurological disease-causing viruses associated, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, autism, lupus, a lot of autoimmune diseases, OCD, you name it. There were at least 32 diseases and many, many cancers associated with this family of viruses. When those data became very clear, and one of our colleagues in HIV published an opinion paper that said the most likely way that mouse viruses zoonosed or jumped into humans was by biological therapies, and the most prominent of which in the last 30 years had been vaccines. We use mice for all of our research in all of the labs. It was very clear in 2010 and 11 the blood supply was heavily contaminated, that more than 25 million Americans were carriers were infected, were carrying these mouse-related cancer-causing viruses, and ticking time bombs for developing cancer and all the related diseases which is occurring in that patient population. This was 25 times HIV AIDS in this country, which was only 1 million Americans in 1991 when I defended my PhD thesis. So the Francis Collins in the NIH in 2010, when 4% of the controls which we got from the blood supply in a study were reported at a meeting at the NIH on September 6th of 2010. In that meeting, Francis Collins ordered Tony Fauci to fund and direct a large confirmatory or replication study, which Ian Lipkin would lead at Columbia University. And several cohorts of patients, 4 or 5, would be gathered, and matching controls, age, sex matching controls. Well, they weren't about to let that study happen using real patients that fit the criteria we used, except one of those cohorts, which came from the Stanford area in Northern California, one of the epicenters of HIV AIDS and this disease, myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome. We did the study. Tony Fauci forbade me, put an order out that if I step foot in Frank Rossetti's lab, where I worked for almost 22 years at the National Cancer Institute in Frederick, Maryland, in Fort Detrick, if I came into the lab to do that study, I would be arrested. So and yet there was a figurative and literal gun to my head that if I didn't agree that the study was fair and I did the whole study, that they would never go look for the viruses again. I mean, Tony Fauci, and then when against all odds, I call it doing retrovirology and virus isolation by phone, because Dr. Rossetti was my eyes in the lab, and he called me to say, is this what the cells look like? Is this what the cells, how to harvest the virus at the peak of its infectivity? We got the positives. We got the right answers in that group, in that patient population from Stanford. Tony Fauci stopped the study, said time to stop wasting the government money, and they applied a statistics to the program called the teacup statistics, and that's beyond comprehension of the stupidity and the evil of this man, Tony Fauci. So he was never going to allow the realization that vaccines cause cancer, that vaccines cause autism, that vaccines cause ME/CFS, that vaccines cause the evolution of more and more virulent strains of cancer-causing viruses that they are directly injecting into infants and old people. And that's exactly how this coronavirus, COVID-19. This is a big cover up of the bigger problem. We don't even think one thing about 2,000 people a day who die of cancer in this country. Do you really think a little cough and in keeping people out of restaurants and stores? I'm talking about 2009. We described infectious transmissible cancer, and Tony Fauci made it all go away.
Wow. So let's go ahead and just review a few things, Dr. Judy. So with the transmission, you believe this is a virus that went through the flu vaccines, and that's how it started, and it is transmissible person to person. You believe that the tests would be inaccurate because you can't just have this positive or negative without looking more into the antibodies, without looking more into non-specific immunity. And also, would you throw out there, I'm sure some of our listeners are aware of, like SV40. Was that another retrovirus that was in the polio vaccines that we gave, another retrovirus that causes cancer? And just so for our audience to be clear, that retroviruses, what activates, if you want to let our audience know, if they've been vaccinated and now they're thinking, oh my goodness, I have all these different animal viruses that wouldn't have caused a problem within the animals, but because they've been injected to me, because vaccines are passed through all these different animal cell cultures to attenuate them, I now have these within me. And how can I suppress them? What can I do in order for them to not express and activate?
Yes, so SV40, simian virus 40, is not a retrovirus, but it is absolutely a cancer-causing virus, and it was absolutely transmitted through the polio vaccines and causes things like mesothelioma. And, so people who were told that mesothelioma and some of the other lung cancers were only caused by cigarette smoking or asbestos exposure, and they never smoked a cigarette and were never exposed and developed the cancers and died very young. Yes, SV40, another cancer-causing virus, was absolutely spread through the human population via vaccines. Yes, we've all been vaccinated. I got the smallpox vaccine and the polio vaccine back in the 1960s. Important to say, they weren't near as dirty then, and we didn't get anywhere near the number of vaccines we get since the liability was removed from pharmaceutical companies and essentially anybody giving vaccines. So there's a bundle of money, because if you call your drug a vaccine, you can just make a ton of money. You don't have to safety test it. I think your audience probably knows that from the work of RFK Jr. and the Children's Health Defense Fund and the ICANN organization under Del Bigtree, that in fact the government has admitted no safety testing has been done on the schedule or the vaccines, placebo-controlled saline or saltwater, sugar water controlled vaccines hasn't happened with a single vaccine on the schedule, and won't, because there's no liability. So that law has to be changed or completely it's gone. Just wipe it from the books from 1986. And that's another president who Tony Fauci stood next to, Ronald Reagan, and scared him. Oh, we won't make your vaccines if you don't remove all liability, because vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. And that was at the time the DTP had whole cell debris in it, those whole cell DNA proteins that were literally killing the children it was given to, or causing lifelong seizures and disease. So what to do about it? We've all been infected. Well, that is the good news, because again, we really are wonderfully and fearfully made by God, and I'm living proof. And the many HIV infected people around the world who we don't even hear about them anymore, because though they're infected, we know how, with natural products, with type 1 interferon, with healthy diets, with medical cannabis, with lots and lots of natural therapies, that energy therapies, things like Rife and magnetic therapies, we can literally zap them once they wake up. We can detect the energies and change things. There's a tremendous amount of technology and a tremendous amount that's been done to keep the virus quiet, learn how to keep the virus quiet. Absolutely don't eat GMO, genetically modified anything. And that's what vaccines are right now, genetically modified organisms. Don't allow ever again another injection. because every one could activate to the point that the firestorm can't be silenced and it could kill you. This is who we are seeing dying, is the elderly with the cofactors, with the other disease. This is who will be sickened to a point of possible death with the coronavirus. So again, these are deadly diseases. 21,000 people died by the contagious Ebola that went through Liberia in 2014. But understanding the immune response and actually taking all that we've done with medicine in the last 40 years, understanding these outbreaks and what stopped them, and asking these questions like you're doing, these intelligent questions, we can absolutely do it. Eat whole, real food. Simple vitamin C, type 1 interferon, the drugs that, that Tony Fauci called anecdotal, the anti-malarial drugs. Those have been used for 70 years. The WHO, the World Health Organization, has a list of essential medicine, and these anti-malarial drugs were on it. And in fact, when the doctor and nurse got infected, Kent Brantley is the doctor, and I forgot Nancy's last name, in that Ebola outbreak, the doctor there wisely, quickly, after he knew that they were possibly exposed, used anti-malarial drugs, the Plaquenil, the chloroquine. These used properly can be safe. We've learned how to use the antiretroviral therapy to the point where we have commercials about PrEP, pre-exposure HIV drugs on TV. And so we know how to use these low dose safely and efficaciously to not only prevent disease exacerbation or spread throughout an individual's body or throughout a population, but in a way to actually recover function that you didn't have. An investigator did a study of one of the first AIDS drug, a product called Suramin. And that's on the SURAMIN. That's on the WHO's list of essential medicines for African sleeping sickness. And that drug has a very long half-life, and used very, very low dose, actually got kids with autism associated with XMRVs, because that's why the investigator tried that drug. It's perfect against gamma retroviruses. It allowed these kids to get their voices back, their lives back. They stopped the drug. Monsanto and Bayer, who own it, stopped the drug and took it away from the kids. So we need to release the natural medicines. We need to close the FDA. The FDA is another one of these criminal organizations. Oh, you can't use that. Oh, you can't do the right test. If they'd done the right test in the beginning, if they'd allowed these drugs in the beginning like President Trump wanted to, if they'd done what Korea did with a validated test and using the knowledge of herd immunity, find out who's immune, transfer the antibodies to the sick, and prevent the disease spread, you don't have to lock down an entire world or an entire nation. We've got the ability to do that now, and we had it 2 months ago, and yet the FDA stood in the way. Because when these tests are done, it'll show everything I'm saying and others are saying about this plague of corruption, that it's exactly right, that this was an agenda that went far beyond an infection. Can the infection be dangerous to the susceptible? Absolutely. I'm the most susceptible. I'm loaded with XMRV. But I don't ever have to get the cancers or associated neurological diseases, as long as I can use my cannabis, I can use my healthy food, I can use vitamin C and take advantage of type 1 interferon alphas. Merck discontinued selling human type 1 interferon alpha. A 50 million international unit vial cost $600 and would have protected 1,000 elderly susceptible people for a week at 50 cents a dose. Oh, they don't make it anymore. Oh, okay. So the cures are out there, the treatments to give infected people a high quality of life, just like we gave HIV infected people a high quality of life since our discoveries of 1991. Since understanding how the immune system is dysregulated. We know exactly how XMRV dysregulates the immune system to lead to cancers and the devastating ME/CFS, and yet these patients are denied those drugs. They're simply called crazy. Or I can't even go into the politics of what they've done to millions of suffering people around the world, people stuck in their beds. Can't be exposed to sunlight or noise. Have been in this kind of isolation for 30 years.
Wow. So you said so much, and I just want to kind of highlight a few things. So essentially, going back to COVID-19, are we looking at something that's been here, and because we put a spotlight on it, because we put the magnifying glass on it, and we're testing for it, and all of a sudden people that are dying from, all types of comorbidities and that would have died anyway, they're dying with COVID, or even one of the, a false positive with one of the common cold coronaviruses, and they're just being labeled as a COVID-19 death. So I want you to just touch that, as well as I heard you say before, the excipient list has been removed, and so we can't even see, like on package inserts, the different animal tissues that these vaccines have been developed on. So I want you to, if you can touch on that. And there was so many things that so if you want to do that first, talk about the excipient list, as well as, is that really what we're seeing? Just give us a big picture, Dr. Judy, and just say, yes, that this has probably started since 2000, you said 13 or 15 maybe, with that engineered virus, that it's inside of the flu vaccine and it is spreading, but it's just because we're putting that spotlight on it, that's really what this pandemic is.
Correct. So the easiest thing I can answer that question with is think about every year in your recent memory. Influenza, flu. Oh, look how many flu deaths we have. The flu vaccine doesn't work. And I'm just talking about CNN and your local media news. Oh, look at, all the 80,000 people the CDC said died of influenza last year. And yet only less than 1,000 of those had a positive test for influenza.
You can see the
So that's the answer to the question. Have you heard one word about influenza this year? Oh, no. Now everything's coronavirus, COVID-19. So they just changed flu to COVID-19. And so, yes, there are many, many causes, bacterial and other, of pneumonia, of the kind of lung disease we're seeing, of people, like my 81-year-old husband with COPD, who could die otherwise and with these disease, from these diseases. So yes, this year it's like, oh, let's just call everything COVID-19. And where's your influenza? You don't hear about it at all. And so, yes, everything was changed to COVID-19. So in those 80,000 people that the CDC said died of flu, which was assumed to be influenza, which was test positive confirmed influenza, less than 1,000 of those 89,000 were the other 79,000 coronaviruses, were 30,000 of those coronaviruses, and some bacterial pneumonia and some respiratory syncytial viruses are the other causes of flu or upper respiratory infections, including vaccines. Vaccine injury causes reactive airway disease because and those are the papers that we were discussing earlier. The vaccines, you're injecting a recombinant thing that is supposed to drive the same inflammatory immune response. Well, in an immune compromised person, they can and do kill them. So that's the first question. Let me think if I can remember the second question.
List. So have they taken off the excipient list? Can you no longer find all the different tissues that they are running these vaccines through to develop them, and all the different potential retroviruses they're picking up, so that we can actually see that on a package insert? Have they taken that off, or can we still read that?
The CDC's vaccine excipient list was modified at the beginning of 2019. So Dr. Rossetti and I and many others, like Teresa Deischer and Barbara Lowe Fisher, and at the Vaccine Information Center, the National Vaccine Information Center, had been talking about the possibilities of these animal tissues, these human fetal cells, for 5-10 years, many people talking about this. And we'd been putting cytokine storm, the things you're seeing in the press now, and the vaccine in our expert opinions, and the vaccines court over and over said, that's impossible. There's no such things. Vaccines only induce local reactions. And we built the argument for dozens of cases in detail of what I've told you here, with molecular detail, pictures and references about how these, what the government calls adventitious agents, they pick these up from the tissue culture. And they admitted it on the Rototech vaccine in the excipient list of 2012 through 2015. It says porcine, pig, coronaviruses, and retroviruses, pig, in that Rototech vaccine given to a 2-month-old. And they said, but there's no evidence those hurt anybody. They cause any kind of disease in humans. So they say, yes, there are adventitious agents in the vaccines in numerous publications, which I can provide you, but there's no evidence they cause disease. So in 2019, we're putting this and others in case after case in vaccine court, saying, yeah, they can do this. They can cause cytokine storms. They can cause the accelerated evolution of a more pathogenic strain of virus that nobody notices until it kills a lot of people. So the CDC simply took the animal cell lines, like calf serum and cow blood and maiden Darby kidney cell, and the WI38 fetal tissue cells that Dr. Deischer was talking about. They just took them out of the excipient list. And they said at the top of their excipient list published online, and I can provide your audience with the old one versus the new one, because I keep the old ones. And you could see they're gone. And so now people look at vaccines and they say, there's nothing in there but sucrose and some dextran and some polysorbate 80 and some aluminum adjuvants, and all of that was placed into the package insert given the doctor. That, number one, the doctor doesn't know it's there. The doctor probably hasn't read those. And the patient, the participant, the recipient is never given that package insert, nor are they given informed consent and explains what the dangers are to them. So yes, the CDC so quietly took it off the excipient list.
Wow. I'm glad it's still on the package insert and they haven't, because I've heard that's going to get changed too. And I'd like you to just elaborate a little bit more with the rise in chronic disease. We have such an explosion in chronic disease. Are you saying that this huge explosion is from the vaccines and from the retroviruses that are in the vaccines? And also, if you could just, since, COVID-19 is such a small problem compared to autism, which is now 1 in 36 kids. And I heard you say that there was a drug that they pulled back that gave these kids back their voice. And if you could just mention the name of that drug, and if there's some type of generic, and if anybody can get a hold of that, I would just like you to touch on that real quick.
So yes, I call the huge explosion of chronic disease I call it 21st century acquired endocannabinoid immune deficiency. So it's 21st century AIDS. There was HIV AIDS in the 20th century, and now the 21st century AIDS is driven not only by the retroviral contaminants, but coronavirus contaminants, SV40 contaminants, bacterial contaminants. We don't often think about Lyme, Borrelia. So look at the explosion of Lyme disease, Borrelia, Babesia. We culture these cells in antibiotics. Antibiotics driving gut dysbiosis, dysregulation of the microbiome. The excipients contain antibiotics. So you're injecting a newborn with antibiotics, the food allergies, the asthma, all of the garbage in those shots, aluminum, mercury, the most extreme neurotoxics and immunotoxic agents that we have. It's not just the bioactives, if you will, the viruses and the bacteria, but it's the aluminum, the polysorbate 80, which is a detergent, literally, that breaks up the blood-brain barrier. Injecting these by the skin, by the nose, at least we can go out and breathe in clean air and not breathe in virus. You're injecting this. You have no idea what happens when you inject versus ingest, because you bypass the immune system, the skin, the gut, the nasal pharyngeal cavity. All of these things have enzymes that break down all of those microbial sequences, all of those viruses before they ever get to your immune system. And we inject them in a newborn who can't detox them, whose liver isn't developed, whose kidneys aren't developed. Or we inject them in an old person with comorbidities, as we described, on heavy medication. We don't understand the drug interactions. Nobody's ever looked. Sorry, I talk too much. And I got that XMRV thing going on. Anyway, so we've created this explosion of chronic disease. We've maimed our thinking. We've maimed our entire culture. We've created cancer younger and younger and younger. And all the medical establishment says is better methods of detection. We just couldn't see it before. So this is the crime against humanity. And hopefully the good news about this pandemic and this COVID-19 fraud against all of humanity is that people will wake up and see it, that by staying in our houses and we're able to eat healthy food, and that we wake up and we refuse to let anyone take away our rights anymore. Our religious freedoms to go to church are being forced to be injected or not. We don't go to school, or we don't have jobs. If we as a people don't stand up and say no more, we won't allow you to perpetrate this fraud on us. I will never allow, our bodies are God-given. This is Nuremberg Code, informed consent, not mandates, not fear. We don't live on fear. That's not what this country was made for. I certainly don't, and I know none of my friends and colleagues do.
Wow, I couldn't say it better. I mean, I don't understand how we're just so willing to give up our liberty for a false sense of security, and that, give me liberty or give me death. So the reason I brought up earlier is this vaccine, because that's the end game. That's the big money maker. You've got 7 billion people on the planet, and you multiply that by $50 a shot. They're saying this could come around every year. They're pointing in the direction of a recurrent, just like we get a flu shot. Well, we don't, but the masses get a flu shot every year. This could be such a huge moneymaker. And the reason I brought up is the vaccine that they're planning to market live or dead, because there was that TED talk of that doctor who for I don't know how many years down in Africa realized, when they went back and did a retrospective study, and they realized that the killed vaccines were causing like a 5 to 10-fold higher risk of all-cause mortality than the live vaccines. So that's why I just wanted to look out, because I know I have friends, I have family that are going to be taking whatever vaccine. They can't wait for it. So I just wondered, in the long run, will it be even more detrimental? And if you can, if you want to comment on that. Also, I heard you mention before of things that we have, great therapeutics, like you mentioned the Rife machine, and I'm sure some of our viewers are familiar with Royal Raymond Rife and what happened to him. And just because a lot of people are divided I wanted you to speak to with 5G. I know 26,000 scientists have signed a petition against 5G for the potential health effects. And so, of course, Rife technology is going to be therapeutic electromagnetic frequency. And if you could just maybe mention that, how it could potentiate and maybe even we are electric, we take electrolytes, we have the electron transport chain, we get our EKG, so we are electric beings. So if you can kind of touch on the potential danger that 5G could hold, and if that's not your area of expertise, no problem, but I just wondered if you could comment on that.
Well, there's a great paper on that James Grunbig wrote and posted on Sherry Tenpenny's Vaxxter.com website, and he goes into it in great detail. But I absolutely agree that the 5G, this energy, they activate the expression of viruses, because viruses are electrical. They use, just as we are electrical, our signaling, our endocannabinoid system is a charge signaling system. It's all about energy. It's all about photons. It's all about light. So yes, you can use these therapeutically, but yes, you can use them to great harm if too much energy is put on a susceptible individual. That can absolutely drive progression of viral associated disease. Long history of that. Absolutely no question about that. And James' article, I can make it available to you. I'm not good at energy, although I'm afraid I'm going to have to learn some more physics here in order to understand all of the interactions because just so much is going on with energy transport in our bodies. And so the mitochondrial deficiencies are what we're seeing. Those are our energy storehouse through the electron transport chain, which you mentioned. That's absolutely crippled by viral infections. And those are driven, by concentrated amounts of 5G and the kinds of energies, especially with the aluminum in being injected in our bodies, and if you will, in the chemtrails and everything we're exposed to. So yes, the energy certainly makes a big difference in our world.
Okay, so now thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And also with chronic disease, do you think that with these retroviruses, you kind of have a chronic state of inflammation? So I wanted you to touch on the autism drug that gave the kids their voices back. And with autism, there's more and more researchers that are saying that it's a chronic, basically like an autoimmune disease of the brain. And so, interleukin 6 is elevated, and all these different, and you talk about the, cytokine storms, that basically it's a dysfunction of the immune system. And so they have this chronic state of inflammation within their brains because it's a autoimmune disease of the brain. If you can speak on that and that drug that gave the voices back.
Yeah, so autoimmune is kind of used improperly, like it's my fault, my cells attack themselves. But autoimmune is meaning that the primary job of your immune system is to tell self from non-self. And that ability to see what's bad and what's good, what's you, is really dysregulated, as we know, when, before the immune system, before the gut microbiome is fully developed, before all the different microbiota. So all of those cells, the microglia in the brain and the immune cells throughout your body are dysregulated every single injection. So the biggest single crime is that we're injecting non-self at birth. Why would you give hepatitis B vaccine with a boatload of aluminum or vitamin K with a boatload of aluminum on the first day of life? They automatically cannot, from that day on, then it becomes cumulative as to how much damage has been done. It's amazing how good our bodies are that we see people functioning at all with what's being injected in a child before they're 3 years old, before they can detox things through their kidneys and have appropriate liver function, and before they've developed the good versus the bad microbiome, the bacteria in the gut, in the brain, in the nasal pharyngeal, in the ears, everywhere that there is. So the drug that was done in a clinical trial, a small clinical trial, but double-blind, placebo-controlled, was called Suramin, Suramin. And if you Wikipedia that, it's going to be on the WHO essential list of medicine. And you, for about 100 years, used for African sleeping sickness. And what you'll see is it's a large molecule with a lot of charge on it. So it absorbs charge. So it kind of protects the membrane of cells. And we've done a lot of studies over the years in cancer. And the problem with why the studies weren't done anymore is because the drug wasn't used appropriately. So number one, it's off patent. You can't patent it. You have to make it something new. It costs essentially nothing. And we realized that in those studies in the 80s and 90s against retroviral and other kinds of cancers, it was particularly effective against some HTLV1. So this is like a sponge, a sink to soak up charge. So it keeps things away from your membranes, away from dysregulating those key signaling molecules like the cannabinoid receptors, from dysregulating the immune response, by soaking up the charge of all of the various viral and non-viral charged pathogens. So it has a half-life of, I don't know, close to 6 weeks to 2 months, meaning you only need to dose it very, very, very low dose every couple of months. And the children were seeing gains in function, getting their voice back, making eye contact without pain, slowly renormalizing their brain, their microglia, the contacts. And we know cannabinoids are extremely important and really can regenerate appropriate brain signaling and microglia and astroglia, the function of the brain immune system to restore it to health. So that drug is not available anywhere. This study was published in the summer of 2015, and Bayer immediately took it off the market. We tried to get this, meaning we, the royal we of a large group of physicians, did everything we could to get this to the sickest of patients and see if we could continue the work. And of course, it was stopped by the higher powers at the highest levels of, the World Health Organization. When these essential medicines and our FDA and our Tony Fauci, that's experimental. Well, what do you think an untested virus injected to a 2-month-old? That's not immunity. And now we know that there's nothing but driving disease. So the vaccines are driving the pandemics. And if this could take, and we just need to bring back natural medicine and the medicines, the older medicines, so that we can learn from them and use them appropriately, combined with other natural products. And of course, cannabinoid, phytocannabinoids, we could restore our health.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That is such a disappointment because, I've worked with kids with autism, and it's so heartbreaking, what their families go through. And I just wanted to see if you were aware of that malaria drug. I guess the mechanism of action is it's driving zinc into the cells, and that's why zinc is so essential for our immune system. And it turns out, just like there's always a natural alternative to a patented medicine, that it turns out black seed oil does that same thing. It even has that kind of Quinn name within the official name of the black seed oil, and so that can accomplish the same thing. It sounds like that the malaria drug does, but you can just order it, at your health food store. So I just wondered if you happen to know if that drug Suramin has a natural alternative. You kind of described the mechanism of action as being like it sounded almost like a master antioxidant, and we know, of course, kids with autism have very low glutathione levels, and so it sounded like it's just kind of mopping up the mess, which is kind of like an antioxidant, neutralizing free radicals and oxidative stress. So are you aware of how Suramin, what it's derived from? Is there a natural alternative that you're aware of?
I'm not aware of it. I looked at it briefly. It was synthetic when it was made 100 years or so ago. So obviously in this day and age of internet, some of those papers are a little bit difficult to get. And so I didn't study it a long time because, for me, yes, while natural is good, if you've got a synthetic or you've got a drug that has been used safely, has minimal side effects, and can help a lot of people, use it at least on the short term, why reinvent the wheel? So I don't know much about black seed oil or the abilities. I do struggle a bit because of I'm a natural products chemist, so we have the same problem with natural products. For instance, we were talking this afternoon in a webinar for Canna World for medical cannabis, and if you dry cannabis with glyphosate, if you grow cannabis in fields with glyphosate or Roundup being used, if you grow in, soil depleted of minerals like zinc, which all our soil is depleted of minerals now in the 21st century, so it's hard to keep clean natural products. So health food store, it's all about bioavailability, and does it get to the right place at the right time, and is it formulated in a way to help? So I still advocate bringing back natural products chemist, because it's tough to tell listeners and tell people, number one, to grow their own, because they are suffering so much, and obviously their families are already struggling with too much. We can't all go out and be farmers, but as my friend, the endocrinologist, Dr. Zach Bush, said, better in this day and age to know your farmer than your doctor. So that's the place we should all go. So I'd love to say use food as medicine rather than buy more pills. This is just what I've always done. It's my practice. I don't tend to take a lot of supplements. I do tend to do the best I can with foods and be minimal as far as the supplements. But I agree with you. There's a great need for that. It's tough to know everything.
Oh, that was fantastic. And since you mentioned Dr. Zach Bush, who's a triple board certified medical doctor, and I'm a huge fan, and I follow and listen to so much of his work, he talks about how there's more viruses than there are stars in the universe. And he talks about how we have this microbiome, which we're just beginning to see the importance of, and it outnumbers our regular cells 10 to 1, and how important it is for overall health and our immune system. And so he's kind of alluded to that there might be, like, he talks about microRNA, which leaves the body. And so remember when all the scientists said, 99% of genome is junk DNA. And of course, we know that God doesn't make junk. So we knew that was false. And then, of course, they were wrong. And we find out that 99% of it has to do with genetic expression. And it's microRNA, which actually can leave the body and actually be like a messenger. And so, in a sense, he alludes to there being maybe a viral biome. So just as we're starting to realize within the trees, within plants system, that they communicate via the roots and the rhizosphere and the mycorrhizae and the mycelium, and they actually produce those volatile organic compounds, and they send these signals from long distances. Several, say a tree has a disease, and it can actually let other plants know several yards away via the rhizosphere and the mycelium and the mycorrhizae and the fungi. It's like almost like this internet of fungus that it lets it know, so it can produce those organic compounds in order to stave off an attack by whatever pest is there. And so, do you think that there could be that viruses aren't bad? I always look at everything that is here isn't necessarily bad. There's just bad balance. So can you maybe speak to that and just kind of say, there's benefits to viruses, and they could be part of that microRNA messaging system, and that's why they work outward. And so when you get sick, it's an outward cleansing, and they messaged basically your body, you need to cleanse at this point. I know it's a little esoteric, but if you could just...
No, it's exactly where, I love Zach's work, and I love that he talks about this, because this is exactly, it's true. Plants have retroviruses. Without retroviruses, the evolution of humans would not necessarily have occurred, because we wouldn't have developed a placenta. So there are retroviruses that, yes, the immune system stops them from being expressed and integrating in a lot of different ways. You don't want to, God doesn't make, as you just said, junk, and you don't want to express the wrong gene in the wrong cell. We know every piece of DNA, the entire blueprint is in the nucleus of every cell. So what makes an eye cell decide to be a blue eye cell and not a brown-eyed cell? That's the expression of, and the regulatory RNA. There's not just the micros, there's the long chain non-coding, and these are being used as cancer therapies. Just as I mentioned, peptide T. This is just a peptide, a small group of amino acids together, and it modulates, it tickles the macrophage and says it's okay, the fire doesn't get too high. We use the term grounding to say that's why I'm so upset that they stop us from walking on the beach. We need to get our sand. There's so much tetani and pieces of nucleic acids in the sand that we get almost like a booster shot through that immune system of our skin. So no, I think this is the big thing about the whole, vaccine strategy. Oh, it was a good idea, but we made a really big mistake, because we were made to evolve according to the microorganisms in our environment. And we don't all have the same microorganisms in our environment. We're not exposed to the same thing. So why would you inject something you're never going to be exposed to and send your immune system in off in a different direction? So I agree with you completely that what this should tell us is it's time to go back 100 years, and just good old fashioned health. When we were kids, you didn't go to a doctor unless you broke your arm. And then even my mom would usually say, you should have thought of that. I told you not to fight those kids, so she'd relent after a little pain, but we didn't do any of this. And so we've lost, our 100-year-old grandmothers. My grandmother was 94. She had diphtheria. She was never in a hospital. We're not at risk, folks. We really do have very strong immune systems, and we're just, too much toxins in our world.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Judy. That was awesome. So I want to turn it over to some other people in the studio, and there's some viewers that have some questions. And if you could just, I'll leave you with one. If you could give us one final thought on this, how do you feel about the therapy that they're giving the COVID-19 patients? You know, fever reducers, even though fever should be our friend, and cough suppressants, even though we want to get that stuff out. And I had read one article, and it didn't name the drug, but they did notice that one of the drugs that they're using in the hospital to treat COVID-19 patients was damaging the heart and leading the patients into cardiac arrest. So I don't know. It did not say if it was an antiviral. It didn't name the drug. It just said that this drug that they were using. And I could get that article to you at some point. But if you could just touch on that, and then I'm going to turn you over to some other friends in the studio.
Well, I just say that what befuddles me, what confuses me is, why don't you do the simple, type 1 interferon? As I said, at 50 cents a dose with 40 years of experience, it's your own human-made biological antiviral that's shown to work exactly against this. It is a spray that you spray in your mouth or eat in your food. It's essentially harmless, other than preventing the spread of this virus and calming down the immune system. So no, I don't know much about what's being done in hospitals right now, because I can't imagine I've seen a lot of articles about using a lot of, there's a new drug here, there's a monoclonal antibody to IL-6. Well, there's a couple of natural products, there are a few plants, there's endocannabinoids, there's vitamin C and hot lemon water and a little interferon. What are we doing, really? So it's like we're doing everything we can to complicate the issue. And yes, subject people to, potentially damaging drug when there are simple solutions that we've known for decades, both prevention and treatment.
Well, great. Dr. Justin, and I've been following our chat. We have a live chat happening here also, so people have been putting questions in there, and so forgive us altogether if some of the questions are things that you may have already touched on or explained, but Lisa is very knowledgeable and uses big words and has touched on many things. And so for some of the more simple-minded people like us, if you could help us to just kind of get a grasp on some of these things at maybe more of a bottom shelf, right? So
Sure.
One of the questions we've gotten in the chat is, are viruses alive? Are we? Oh, you there?
Viruses are considered to be obligate parasites. I think I mentioned, meaning they need your cells and your tissue machinery of the host cells in order to stay alive. They can't live in the air. So in that respect, they can't live on a surface. They need to live within another organism. Coronaviruses live in essentially all animals, different kinds of animals, different kinds of coronaviruses. Viruses by themselves are not alive. They're proteins or nucleic acid. They need to have a host cell and the cell machinery to make more copies or replicates of themselves and persist. They can sit as nucleic acid in your system, dormant, like seed in a plant before they burst open and wake up and grow into a plant, but they're not by themselves alive.
Very good. So that
everything we heard about living in the air is garbage. That's why it's so stupid, this so-called social distancing. Stay 6 feet away from each other. Viruses don't travel 6 feet and live without. And that's also why not to wear a mask. They need water droplets. They need cells in those droplets from your throat, from your nasal swabs to live in. And so if you dry them out, they don't live.
Very good. I think that's something people need to hear. So So how do viruses naturally occur in nature? We've talked about some of the things that happen in laboratories and how people manipulate these naturally occurring viruses. That I think of like your gut biome and stuff like that. Maybe when you're talking about the parasites, because we all have these types of things in our systems already. So I kind of think of virus maybe along the same lines. I've never looked in a microscope except for when I got that kit for Christmas, when I was like 8, but I didn't even get to see anything there. But so when a virus, how does a virus occur naturally in nature? How is it going to show itself? You mentioned like it being in a disease state or just kind of latent. How would a virus occur naturally without what we've seen currently with these manipulations that happen in laboratories because scientists are trying to manipulate what is naturally occurring in nature?
Well, see, they're manipulating them in cells of animals. So like you just said, all animals have a microbiome. So good bacteria in your gut at your mucosal surfaces. We also have a virome. We have lots of things that we've been infected with through the millennia, pieces and parts. And these things, so that's what we're trying to say about the bats. The bats, live quite happily with God knows how many pathogenic coronaviruses that would kill us. The monkeys don't care about simian immune deficiency virus. They're parts of their expression in the genomes. Plants have retroviruses. They're parts of your genome. I actually can't even, I'm not an evolutionary biologist, and I don't understand the interactions necessarily, but viruses have to live in cells. So in laboratories, you're working with animal tissue or cells. And so when you mix or animal cell lines that we grow in a lab, normally you can't grow cells in a lab because they don't divide outside of the body of the host. But over the last 40 years, we've discovered all these growth factors and molecules from being, learning about immune systems of different animals. So they start as DNA, as RNA, as nucleic acid, as blueprints. Our nucleic acid is blueprints in the cell. So they have a blueprint, and if that blueprint is translated and transcribed and translated, it becomes an organism, it becomes an organ system, it becomes an entire plant, whether you're a leaf or your stem, whether you're, a cat or a dog. Cats have very different viruses than bats, because cats have cells that support different viruses, different bacteria. We have ticks, we have insects, we have flies. All of those things harbor other organisms. It's an entire ecosystem. It's an entire world. What you don't do is disrupt that world and mix animal tissue. So what's coming out of the laboratory, so we talk about the natural evolution. So what it would take for a bat virus to infect a human without killing the cell, and if they kill the cell, they don't survive. So they have to establish a home in human cells in order to make more bat viruses. So they have a big old home in bats. It's called a reservoir, all the bats and the other different animals. And it's, and they don't exist in humans because they kill the host. Well, you can't kill the host and survive. So with every kind of species on the planet, they all have viruses in their DNA or RNA that are either expressed or not. And only if the host animal cells get disturbed or become ill, or in humans, if you're sick and you can't fight off an infection, then lots of things infect you. So it's a difficult question to even come close to answer. But I guess it's one of the reasons why I came a virologist, and I only look at human viruses. I don't think much about animal viruses, but my friends, the zoologists, look very carefully, because this will tell you why a species becomes extinct, or why an illness, a famine, can change the diet such that a once non-pathogenic bacteria overrides the gut, and it becomes pathogenic, and it kills the host. That's a little bit what sepsis is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a question regarding, I've got a lot of notes I've made. So like the Spanish flu in 1918, I've heard that there was a vaccination associated, as you mentioned before, that these viruses, and maybe the flu virus also, or that they can be injected, and that's usually how these things become an epidemic. So in the case of the Spanish flu, do you know anything of the history of that, and associating that with any particular vaccinations?
There's a book sitting on my table that Dr. Rossetti gave me to read, and I haven't had time to read it. What I do know from Dr. Suzanne Humphrey's book, Dissolving Illusions, is that in the case, and it's not a virus, it's smallpox. In the case of smallpox, the vaccination program drove the most severe, the evolution of the most pathogenics, the outbreaks where many, many more people died. So it's the communication. So the vaccination actually can drive the evolution. And that's what we're saying with the coronaviruses, the accelerated evolution of one family at the expense of another. In the case of the flu vaccine, in that scientific term we call viral interference. So yes, if you read that wonderful book by Dr. Suzanne Humphreys, Dissolving Illusion, it talks about, everybody credits, the smallpox vaccine, ended, saved us in World War II. So, that's not the story that the science supports, and in her book details it in great length. So, yes, I think there's enough data to stand by the vaccines driving the pandemics, especially with the time. What have we had here in the 21st century? We started with SARS, we got MERS, we got bird flu, swine flu, Zika, Ebola, new outbreaks. And every one of those was associated with a vaccine program, or a chemical spraying program in conjunction, something like pesticides. Every one of those viruses don't just jump out of their original host. For instance, Zika's always been around in Colombia and Brazil. They don't just jump species overnight. Their ecosystem, their world they have to be, they have to be threatening that they're not going to have a home to live in. So they have to jump species if they're, for instance, sprayed with Roundup.
Okay.
And that's some of what happened in Zika. And along with the victims of the microcephaly were forced to get DTP, the DTP shot, with the aluminum in the whole cell from the pertussis, with lots of other organisms. That's where you found the brain dysfunction and the deaths. The Zika virus, it's in Colombia, and you didn't have a problem in Colombia because you didn't have the spraying at that time.
So there's been, we know that the vaccination count for the children in their schedule has just exponentially grown. Do you think, and you mentioned that some of those included coronaviruses, am I right on that?
Oh, every time you look at the excipient list and you see cow blood, and you see pig, the Rototech, where the porcine coronaviruses and retroviruses, the maiden derby, the dog kidney cells have coronaviruses, the flu vaccines grown in chicken eggs have coronaviruses. So any of those can pick up a virus and carry it in the vaccine, and you inject it so it doesn't have to be infectious.
So that means if anybody's had these vaccines, even if they're not manifesting with any symptoms, if they were to be tested, they could be testing positive for coronavirus because they have it. They've had these.
Absolutely.
So that brings me to my next question: is how do you explain these numbers? So just to somebody who's tuning in and seeing that today or yesterday in the United States, there's so many deaths. It's like 1 out of 10 of the total case. We have 311 million people in our country, so there's 311,000 people exposed to that are total cases. These are extreme numbers, and then you have these deaths. There's 8,400 deaths in the United States. How do you explain these numbers to somebody who thinks that, well, there's clearly something substantial going on? How would you justify, or how would you defend those numbers? Because there are some figures that we need to answer.
Numbers aren't being reported as the actual deaths. As we heard, you don't die of an you die with an infection, not of an infection. In Italy, they had 2 or 3 comorbidities: high blood pressure, heart disease. Infection didn't cause the death. My husband has a severe COPD. If he died tomorrow, he could have, that the virus didn't cause his death. That the healthy person doesn't cause he could be exposed to a microbial pneumonia or another upper respiratory infection that could drive the COPD. He's got documented COPD, documented heart disease, documented AFib. It doesn't take much inflammation, to kill a person. They're not dying of coronavirus. They're dying of something else, and it's being called that. And we know of doctors and nurses in hospitals who say that's, and if you watch Del Bigtree's High Wire show from 2 weeks ago, Thursday, I can't quite remember, 2 Thursdays ago, it's on Thursdays, you can find it in the archives. The death certificates say coronavirus. Whether they tested positive or had it or not, if you walk in with a cough, it's coronavirus. And that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Wait a minute, wasn't that influenza last year? Didn't the CDC say 80,000 people died of influenza last year and only 1,000 of them tested positive? Show me the data. When I see lungs that are riddled with virus particles and the virus clearly killed the person, I'll admit that is a coronavirus death. Haven't seen that. We're not seeing those data. A chest x-ray does not diagnose a coronavirus infection. You cannot distinguish what my husband got from a bacterial pneumonia in his 30s. They didn't even type the pneumonia. They didn't even type the bacteria. So how can we say this when we make a pneumonia vaccine with 23 different pneumonia-causing microbes, pieces and parts? Oh, that's 23. Are you counting all of those? No. We just, in 2020, every person that walks in a hospital and dies with a cough is called coronavirus. Sorry, I'm not buying it. It's fraud.
Well, so how can somebody who's had, because my daughter, she just had an appendectomy, and she was just totally given all the antibiotics in the world. She's 3 years old, and so how do you get yourself back up? And people maybe who've had compromised immune systems for one reason or another. And I'm just using my daughter as an example because it's immediately in my life. So what can somebody do to boost up, and just how can we strengthen our immunity?
That's what we've been doing, for my husband the last decade or so since I realized all this. He's off all drugs except for one. He's eating healthy, non-GMO. He's taking supplements, anti-inflammatory supplements. Again, he's 81 years old. We got him off the immune suppressing steroids. You stop antibiotics. We stopped all vaccination. We tried to heal with, good old-fashioned chicken bone broth soup and vitamin C and staying home and using essential oils in a diffuser, tea tree oil, orange oil, lemon. We went as natural as we can. We get him out in the sunlight every day for vitamin C, for a walk, exercise that's not extreme as you can. We go back to all the natural health medicines, and the most important thing is your food. Our food is our medicine. We stop taking essentially all the pills, very few pills, very few supplements. We use a liquid iodine with kelp because there's so much radiation toxicity. And here in Ventura, California, the fires of a couple of years ago, we lived in a house that developed mold after the flood. We moved in January. The best you can do is keep your environment clean, and start over. Yes, when you have other, he's had the most significant comorbidities, you just do the best you can. And I do the same thing since I was, I seroconverted and had very high protein levels of the XMRVs in 2010. So I've had to do, you can hear my voice now, as I will lose my voice and I will start coughing because my lungs are a sensitive tissue place because I was born 6 weeks early. I'm an identical twin, and so my lungs weren't fully developed. So inflammation in sites of tissue injury is where inflammation tends to go. So we do the best we can to live clean. That's about all I can really say. We've got to get away from giving away the responsibility for our health to a doctor. I don't think I've been to a doctor in a decade except for the oral surgeon who took all the infected root canals and mercury out of my mouth last year and changed my life.
Awesome. So I really appreciate the time you spent with us, pouring yourself out. I know that you've been talking a lot, and you mentioned that you could lose your voice on something like this. So everybody is super grateful. Our live chat here is just expressing how important the information has been that you've shared with us. And I do have one question, which is kind of a two-parter, but it's the same question. People have shared on social media that elderberry syrup is ineffective when it comes to treating the coronavirus. And on that same note, they tell us that it could be dangerous to use Tylenol and ibuprofen. So do you have any comments that would maybe shed some wisdom on that subject specifically?
I do on Tylenol. Tylenol, absolutely never in any situation, much less coronavirus. It's so damaging and so hard on your liver. It's not a good idea for anything. And yet it's the go-to in most emergency rooms. I do favor some of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs that in certain situations, but I'm not. I haven't really looked at it with respect to coronavirus, and I don't know enough about elderberry syrup to answer that. I do know that quercetin and alpha lipoic acid, which are hugely beneficial. Quercetin for calming the mast cell. It's a type of cell in allergy. What gives you the allergy? If you have co-infection, one of the things that is a problem right now is, of course, it's springtime, so pollen's in the air, so allergies, so histamine. Well, one of the things the mast cells will do after releasing the histamines and the other particles is they will start releasing the same inflammatory mediators like IL-6. It's a chronic phase of mast cell activation. So people with mast cell activation disorders, and they know who they are, or chemical sensitivities, that will wake up and that will drive inflammation. So quercetin is extremely calming as a natural product for mast cells, and that's something that you can use to at least fight. What you want to do is fight the co-infections and those co-sensitivities, like keep yourself out of pollution as best as possible. Obviously, don't smoke, and if you work with chemicals and toxic chemicals too, then that's the only time I would wear a protective mask. And if you're exposed at all to the fires in California, those were a real problem with driving lung disease, and they will drive bacterial and viral pneumonia causing like coronavirus.
Wonderful. So I don't have any more questions. People are still pouring questions out. Can I ask you a more personal question?
Sure.
Are you a Christian?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't know that. People were asking. Would you be a Baptist by chance?
No, I think we're Presbyterians.
Okay. Well, those are questions because we attend a Baptist church, so a lot of people who follow us for that reason. So we want, those questions are kind of coming up. So yeah. A lot of people are just thanking God and asking God to bless you for what you've shared. I think we want this to talk about something going viral. We want this to go viral. We want people to hear this message. I want people to I think somebody needs to go back and take notes and pretty much post an article just talking about some of the things that you had mentioned, because I'm trying to, I'm trying to pull some of these things that you say out as I'm listening, and I can't keep up with some of the stuff that you've said. So there's a treasure cove here of just wisdom and just good advice. So is there anything that you'd like to say on any subject, or if you'd like to conclude?
It's a Christian message, or a God message, I should say, because it's not limited to Christian, and it's really a God message. We're in this country, around the world, our religious freedoms are being removed, and we don't fear a microbe or a virus. We fear the Lord, and we answer to the Lord, and we trust the Lord for our immunity. And we are, as I quoted some scripture earlier, wonderfully and fearfully made.
I saw that.
And I very much believe God will take what's intended for evil and make good of it. And that's basically why I try to talk, because I don't want people. I mean, I spend a lot of time with clients with cancer, and those patients are just hung out to dry, and they're very afraid, and that will spin their disease. And it's just to calm them down in this nightmare, or people that don't know how they're going to feed their children, and they're going to lose everything. Just trust, but please don't give away any more of your freedoms. I was appalled to hear the New York mayor say if churches didn't close when he ordered them closed, and they didn't close their door, he'd close them permanently. Are you kidding me? Who can tell us we can't walk on the beach in God's sun, under God's and healing the sand, as we talked about, the sun, the sand, the healing? You can see God in all of it. You're kidding me. I can't go out on the beach in Ventura or Carlsbad, California, where I live. How am I hurting the public health? So when I want people to wake up and say no more, we will not bow down. Tony Fauci, Big Pharma, government, whoever you are, you are not our God. We bow down to only one God.
Hey, Dr. Judy, we just wanted to thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate you spending all this time with us. Is there a place where we can send people to you, to look at your books or to support you anyway? Can you plug that for us?
.com. www.plaguethebook.com.
Awesome. So go to plaguethebook.com, support Dr. Judy. It was a pleasure having you on the show today. We had just a ton of people, responding and liking it and asking tons of questions. And we'd love to have you on the show again if you're willing. We had a great time chatting with you. So, we're just God bless. And thanks again for calling us.
God bless, and thank you again. Thanks, Logan.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Man, that was amazing, right?
Yeah, that was awesome. We got to have her back on
For sure.
Totally. Is Lisa still here? Did she?
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Lisa.
So
You did a great
Camera's
job,
off.
Lisa. Thank you so much. I'm really glad that I didn't have to do all of that.
yeah, Lisa did a phenomenal job. Obviously, because you have the background in it a little more, so you know the poignant questions to ask. Phenomenal job, Lisa, on the question. I think that was our best that we've done on this show, as far as just giving precise questions to the guests to kind of just tee up and go off. So, man, great job, everyone, on that. So I think maybe we'll do a.
Go ahead and mute.
let me
Lisa. Yeah.
Paul's running over there all crazy. So let me do. Let's do another giveaway. I have one more question before we kind of shut it down tonight. So the phone number to call in 480-465-1203. This one's kind of a funny one. We had a pretty serious chat today, so we'll kind of loosen it up at the end of the show. So this is one that I got straight from my nephew, straight in this age range. So call into the show if you know the answer. What nickname did Generation Z give for the coronavirus? Call in the show 480-465-1203.
Dude, this is the best question.
What is the nickname that Generation
And I didn't
Z
know this either.
gave for the coronavirus? So, we're waiting for that call. Dustin, do you have any?
Do you know this, Lisa?
No.
Oh,
Don't
you
answer
muted
it, Lisa.
My kids would probably know.
Yeah, your
Yeah,
kids
don't
would know.
answer.
Text your kids. Dustin, do you have any? Before someone calls in, do you have any? You want to kind of debrief the show? What you thought? Your thoughts were on the doctor?
Yeah, I thought she was pretty good. I'm actually looking to see if this is something that somebody can answer by doing a Google search. All right. Okay, it's there. All right,
Yeah.
so we can actually reference.
So we can. This is a true answer. We
This
have our
is not
first
like
caller.
Yeah.
Let me get it. All right.
Oh, sorry. This is.
All right. You're on the air. Who is this?
This is Kevin from South Carolina.
Hey, it's Kevin.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin from South Carolina. What is the nickname Generation Z
Wait,
gave for
hold
the
on a second, hold on a
coronavirus?
second, hold on a
Dustin
second.
has a
Wait,
question
whoa,
for
whoa,
you.
Is it the Rona?
Whoa. Kevin, what'd you win last time?
I didn't win anything. I guessed Isaiah, and it was wrong.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
hold on a
right.
second.
We're
We're
gonna
gonna
get you something.
We're gonna
so,
get you that. So you actually won because of Logan?
Yes, that's my fault, Kevin. So I will call you back.
No, but you can have the answer to this one too.
No, because he already said it and it is incorrect. However, you will win a
you're
prize
right,
for
you're
your
right.
previous answer. So that's all right, Kevin.
Okay.
I'm gonna call. I have your number here, so I'm gonna call you back. But I'm gonna hang up to open the phone line. Okay, bud?
All right.
All
Good
right, thanks,
job,
brother.
Kevin, but not this time.
All right. So that answer was incorrect. So you still have a chance. 480-465-1203. All right, here's our next guest. All right, you're live on the air with Framing the World. Who is this?
Hello?
Hello,
Hi, you're live on the air with Framing the World. Who is this?
this is Laura Warner.
Laura, and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Texas.
All right, Laura from Texas. What is the answer?
Boomer Remover.
That's right. The Boomer Remover. All right,
Laura,
we
did you know that?
We apologize to anyone in our older age
No,
group.
I have not.
Fan
Don't
audience.
apologize.
It's a
Come
joke.
on, Logan.
We're
Don't be
having-
afraid
we're
of
having
the
fun.
boomers. What are they going to do to you, huh? What are they going to do? Spend your
They're gonna
your
spend the inheritance. Yeah.
Yeah. So listen, Laura, did you have to Google that, or are you a Gen Xer or what? Or Gen Zer? Sorry.
Well, I had to Google it.
Okay.
I'm a little bit older, so.
What generation are you? Are you a millennial like Logan?
Well, I'm 37, so.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that
you're a
makes
millennial.
You're a
You and
millennial.
me, yeah.
You're totally
Millennials.
Millennial. Yeah. All right, you guys are okay.
Do I have to claim that?
What? How old are you?
38.
Yes.
Yeah, you're millennial.
You don't have to claim anything.
Dustin's in the Gen Xer.
Yeah.
Dustin's the old man around here.
No, I win.
I think we're the generation that is, just getting the truth out there and just, sharing God's word and getting the gospel out, And I was hoping you guys would be able to give her the gospel, but you probably need to do that in a different time.
Yeah, this is not the context for this show. It says, and keep in mind, everybody, not every person that we have on the show is going to be fundamental, independent, Baptist, saved. We're going to get all types of folks from all different strokes, to try and give you the best information we can. So, we want to keep it light and, not make it, weird for anybody. But yeah, obviously,
awkward.
As we develop this relationship with her, because 100%, when I get off this line, I'm going to call her and see about doing a weekly show with her. I think she would be a perfect guest to have on, trim it back down. We had she was on for what, 2 hours
2
today?
hours. At
Just
least
she
2
totally
hours.
was
I
losing
think
her
more than 2
voice.
hours, yeah.
Just totally epic interview. So we're going to definitely
It's
try and get her
something
on.
That would be great.
Yeah, trying to get her on every week, to try and do a little segment to kind of recap what's gone, what they've been feeding us, on the mainstream media for the week. And just kind of be a resource for you guys, because there was a ton of questions that we did not have a chance to ask her, from you guys.
Well,
so,
I thought that Miss Palumbo did a great job.
Yeah, phenomenal job, phenomenal.
Nailed it.
Yep.
Nailed it on that
guys.
interview.
Thanks. Yeah, she's
Well,
awesome.
I wanted to know what her thoughts were about the apricot seeds, B17.
Lisa, do you have an answer for that?
No, those are great. You can order them from Sun Organics, and they what they do, they're called amygdalin or Laetrile, it's known as, and your healthy cells have there's two different enzymes. Cancer cells have one enzyme. I believe it's either beta glucosidase, and then the healthy cells have rhodonase. And so it's a chemical reaction with what's it called? It's cyanide and benzaldehyde. Yes, it's cyanide and benzaldehyde. Those are the two chemicals that are within the apricot seeds or even apple seeds, and then they react with that enzyme that's in the cancer cell, and it kills the cancer cell. But then within the healthy cell, yes, it is incredible. We order those, and we always eat our apple seeds. I put whole apples in the Vitamix with cranberries and make fresh applesauce, so we're getting apple seeds that way. But the apricot seeds are the most concentrated source. So it happens, it's a chemical reaction, and then within your healthy cells, the enzyme actually creates byproducts that are good for you. So it's a win-win, so it's a smart bomb.
I wanted to say my experience with the apricot seeds. I had a cyst at one point, and I was pregnant at the time. And, also peach seeds are the same as apricot seeds. Mm-hmm. So I started taking peach seeds, and it went away.
Wow.
So,
I love it. Are you familiar with that? I don't know how old he is now, but at the time he was in his mid-20s. He had a brain tumor. He went through conventional therapy, and it came back. And then so his tumor came back with a vengeance, and so he learned about this therapy. He started just cracking pits. He was buying cases of these apricots, and he beat his tumor. But then he was so passionate about it, he started a website. I want to say it was called Apricot Seeds from God, and him and his grandmother kind of ran a business selling the apricot seeds and the information, and he was arrested and under a felony, because remember, only the FDA can say what cures a disease. So he used that 4-letter word, cure, and next thing you know, he's in an orange jumpsuit in a prison for a really long time. And I used to follow what happened to him. I do believe he has been released, and there's a great documentary by Edward G. Griffin called A World Without Cancer. Yes, it's like a vintage.
I have that book.
Okay, you have the whole book. It's a big book, and but the documentary is about an hour long. You can find it on YouTube, and I can't remember. I'm shocked. I remember those names of the rhodonase and beta glucosinate, but that's the name of the enzymes, and it's cyanide and benzaldehyde, and so together they work. They're even synergistically way more toxic than they would be individually, but yet they're only going to be toxic to the cancer cell.
I'm not that.
They also call it amygdalin.
So say that again. I'm sorry.
They also he calls it amygdalin.
Yeah, amygdalin, Laetrile.
amygdalin.
It was known as Laetrile, or vitamin B17. And if you notice, if you buy a B complex at the health food store, B17 is mysteriously missing because they took it out. So we can't even get it unless you get the real deal, the seeds.
Yep, I know that.
That's awesome. Congrats. I'm so happy that you conquered that cyst. That's fantastic.
Well, thanks so much for calling. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Stay on the line, though, because we need to get your information.
All right.
Okay.
So Laura from Texas won the fluoride poison on tap. So she's got that. So these two are now claimed, right?
Gone.
Okay, very good. So that gives Paul something to do. We'll get that in the mail to you.
I don't have enough to do. So.
Yeah. So, it would be a good idea to maybe just send something over to Dr. Judy. Give her a little care package, and try to give her some good stuff so she can, I'm sure she'd like watch a couple DVDs or something. So
yeah.
For coming on the show, a little fruit basket, or I'll throw a couple bucks down for that. So, all right. Do you want to take any more calls, or you reckon this
I think that's about it.
Okay.
We're at 2.5 hours, so I really appreciate everyone tuning in. And make sure to head over to the store, guys, and get a waterproof Bible. We just got those back in stock, and so we have the New Testaments, the Camel Bibles, and then we also have the full Bibles, and then the new brown cover as well. So this just came in. They just got these. And so I really hope you guys decide to support the show. We definitely can't do it without you guys. So I want to keep doing this. And so if you guys support it, we'll keep doing it. It seems like everyone likes the show. Everyone is excited about the show. I'm getting a lot of emails saying how much you guys like the show. So I really appreciate everyone's support. Make sure you share the videos that we've done, the hashtag pandemic videos, the 2 different videos that I've made. Make sure you share those on your social media account and get that information out there, guys. Don't be scared to share those videos. Don't be scared to share the truth on this issue. And also we have new in the store some DMSO. So we got a bunch of DMSO now that if you guys want to go get some DMSO. Lisa, do you know much about DMSO?
I read a book on the MSM. So DMSO, what is it again? It's dimethyl it's a derivative of the MSM. And so I read a whole book on MSM, and it's incredible stuff. So no household should be without it. It works great. It's such a it kind of works as a solvent, so you can use it with another, like arnica gel, to push it farther into your body for pain relief and things like that. So it has so many uses. You can just kind of learn more about it online, but it works great.
Hey Lisa, what was the name of that website where you recommend to buy those apricot seeds?
Oh, Sun Organics.
Okay.
Yeah, and guys, DMSO, just to give you an idea how awesome this stuff is. So my son took a baseball bat and was trying to hit a ball off a little what is it called? Like a little putt thing, and he hit my daughter right in the head with the baseball bat, and her eye was just like gnarly looking. We put the DMSO on right away, and that was the whole bruise, everything was gone within a few days. And so this stuff works awesome. It's just amazing stuff. But yeah, you should definitely support the show. If you can, go out and get some at framingtheworld.com. But thanks, guys, for tuning in. Any final thoughts from anyone?
Lisa, is that sunorganicfarm.com?
Sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you can even order anything online nowadays. Deliveries have been really
yeah.
Well,
that's
right
just
out
Amazon.
of California.
Well, Paul's working. He's essential.
Yeah. I'm still shipping things out, guys. So if you need something from our store, I'm shipping them out.
He'll go to the grocery store and ship it to you.
No.
No? Oh, darn it. I'm trying to get you some business, man.
No.
Just mark it up.
Yeah.
Just mark it up. That's great.
Any
All right,
final
is that
thoughts,
it? No,
Logan?
man, that was a great
Sign
show.
us
We're
off,
gonna
man.
we're trying to get her on again. So yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can hear when we have these shows on. Make sure to share it. We do these shows just about every day. We take off for Sunday, because that's church. But pretty much Monday through Saturday, we're gonna have this show. So it's always going to start at 4:45 unless we have a conflict with the guests like we had with Dr. Kent Hovind, where we have to change it. But it's primarily going to be afternoon 4:45 Arizona time. And we won't mix that one up again. I'll do better on the questions so I don't give you the wrong answer and make you call in again. So yeah, we're going to have a good time. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And yeah, we'll see you on Monday.
Yep. And real quick though, before we leave, who do we have a guest on next week on Thursday?
You have it's Pastor Chuck Baldwin, right?
Yeah, Chuck Baldwin. That's right.
Yeah, so
I couldn't
Pastor Chuck
remember.
Baldwin.
Yeah,
That one's
so we
gonna
have
be awesome,
Pastor
yeah.
Chuck Baldwin scheduled on the show for this week or this upcoming week. So make sure to tune into these streams. We're going to be live on Monday again. And so I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
And make sure when any questions that you have for Paul, just shoot us an email. You put it in the chat, but once the show's over, the chat's kind of gone. So if you have a doctor, someone that you want us to interview that you think would be good on the show, email it to us. If you have their contact info, even better. Sometimes a lot of times I kind of have to do a dry search on these people to try and get a contact for them. But anyone that you think would be great for this show, let us know, and we'd love to try and get them on there. So this show is for you guys. We're trying to make it that best and most entertaining for you guys and informative for you. So whoever you'd like to be on the show, just let us know. We'll get them.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much.
God bless. Have a great night, guys.